Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk about plural nouns in Pashto. We use plural nouns if we have a noun like book and we want to say books. This seems really simple, but unfortunately in Pashto it's pretty complicated, so we need a couple of videos to kind of go through it all. How do we make a noun plural? So, as we saw in the last couple of videos, if you can inflect it, you can just inflect it to make it plural. Khaza, for instance, can inflect to khazi, which is women. So there we go. We just inflected it, and that made it plural. We could have a noun like sare, and that's man, and we can inflect it to sari, and then that means men. If we also have to inflect it for another reason, let's say it's in a sandwich, then we would have to say sareo for men. That's nice, but not all words can inflect. Sometimes we need to use the plural forms. We need to use plural endings. Like kitab gets a plural ending, and we can say kitabuna for books. Or dost, as a friend, we add a plural ending on the end and say dostan for friends. So what are these plural forms, and how do we know how to use them? Well, unfortunately, there are a lot of them. You'll hear an, or una, or we, and sometimes there's just special plurals, just crazy exceptions. Sometimes there's Arabic plurals that came from Arabic. So don't be intimidated, and don't feel like you need to learn them all at once, but enjoy the tour through all these different types of plural forms, and then over time you can keep coming back to this and trying to master all the different endings. The linguist John McWhorter made a podcast where he actually talked about how Pashto is actually a lot more complicated than a lot of other languages. He talked about how in other languages you might just have a single simple ending that you use and you can just slap it on any noun to make it plural. But in Pashto, well, let's see what he said about that.
Well, in Pashto, the plural could make a grown man cry, like eyelashes, banu gan, okay? Hands, las, not gun, not las gun, las una. Wolves, leu an.
So you can see that even John McWhorter, the distinguished language professional, is just amazed at how crazy all these Pashto plurals seem. Well, thankfully, it's not just all random craziness. There are just a bunch of rules that we can learn and get used to. So let's look at, first of all, the una ending. We can add these to words like kor, for instance. We can say koruna, and that makes it into houses. Or if we have kitab, like we saw earlier, we can add una on the end, and it becomes kitabuna for books. Now, these are only used with masculine nouns ending in a consonant or a in other words, the pattern 1 basic forms of nouns that we saw in the previous videos, the masculine forms. And it's usually with inanimate nouns, so non-living things like books and houses and other things that are not people or animals, living things. Let's look at a few more examples of this. For instance, kalam is a pen. If we add the una ending onto it, it's kalamuna, pens. Wade for wedding. When we add the ending on it, just like anytime we add an ending on the on the end, we just cover over it and say waduna. So wade becomes waduna. Another ending you'll see is the an ending. For mashum is a male child. If we make it plural, it's mashuman using the an ending. Daktar is a doctor. If we add that ending, daktaran for doctors. So this an ending works with pattern 1 basic nouns, nouns that are ending in a consonant or a schwa on the end, and it's usually used for animate nouns, so for living things, animals or people. And this can be masculine or feminine if it's on a unisex noun. How does that work? Well, mashum, like we saw before, this is a unisex noun. It can be either masculine or feminine. Mashum for a masculine child and mashuma for a feminine child. So if we have mashum, a male child, the plural is going to be mashuman for a bunch of male children or a mixed group of children. If we have a mashuma, a female child, well, we're going to add the an ending on there, but it's going to have a little e on the end for the feminine form, mashumani, for female children, a group of all female children. Like we saw before, doctor is the word for doctor, and this is also a unisex noun, so we could say doctor for a doctor and then add the an on the end, doctoran, doctors. If it's a female doctor, it's going to be doctora. We add a little a on the end there because we're using the female form of this pattern 1 noun. And then we can add the plural ending on with doctorani. Again, with the an ending there because it's feminine, we have a little a on the end. Now this brings up a bit of an interesting point because we could either use that ending or we could just inflect it. We can say doctora and add the ending on the end and say doctorani. That's totally valid. But we could also just inflect that word to make it plural. Doctora could be inflected to doctere using the first inflection there. And then we're talking about plural doctors. So let's look at this clip where a guy is talking about plural female doctors. So we can see there he chose to use the inflected form, docteri, for talking to make that noun plural. He could have also said doctorani. Let's look at some other examples of how we might use the an ending. Cerg, if we have a male chicken or a rooster. Well, it's an animate, living thing, so we can just add the an ending on the end there, cergan, for roosters, or male chickens. If it's a female chicken, a hen, then it's a cerga. So we can either say cergani for hens or cergi. Again, one is just using the an ending, and the other one is using the inflected form. So this also works with pattern 3, animate nouns. So by pattern 3, I mean ones with the A on the end, with the accent, the emphasis on the end. That's very important. For instance, the word gaonde. So it's important that the accent is on the end, and it's an animate noun. So that fulfills both of these. So we can say gaondian. And notice here when we add the an ending there, the A turns into I like that, gaondian. Or coche, a nomad, could be cochian for its plural. This is often used with words for nationalities. So with nationalities, often we just add an A on the end of the country name. Like Iran is the country Iran, and then we say Iranais for an Iranian person. If it's a man, Iranais, then we want to make it plural, we want to talk about Iranians, Iranian. If it's a woman, Iranais, again, we're using the pattern 3 accented A form there. So this is just like any other thing that would fit that form. It kind of changes like this in the feminine. And if we add the ending on the end, Iraniani. Notice we have the little I on the end because it is feminine. So what about nouns that end in long vowels like a, o, u, or I? Well, if we add our plural an ending there, then we have to put a little G sound there to kind of space the two vowels apart. So the word mama, uncle there, it's a masculine noun ending in a long A. So we can't say mama an, we have to say mama gan for uncles. Or barnu for an eyelash, barnu gan for eyelashes. Also with feminine nouns this works. So roi, then if we add the ani ending for feminine, roigani for cows. Pichot for a cat becomes pichogani. Now at this point some people would say, well, actually the we ending is the more proper thing to use in this setting. So for feminine nouns, not masculine, but for feminine nouns that end in an a, o, or u, well, some people will say roivi. Instead of roi, they'll say roivi for the plural there. But also a lot of people will say roigani. Now some people may say that the we ending there is the more standard, correct written thing, but you will hear both and see both written and spoken. Another example would be dua for prayer, and duavi would be prayers, or a lot of people will say duagani. Another example would be arzu. You could say arzuve but probably more commonly arzugani for desires. Usually with the u, I think people more often use the gani form. Okay, and also with nouns that end in an e or an a, then, and usually with animate nouns, we can also use the an ending, like kazi for judge. Again, this is an animate noun, and so the plural is going to be kazian for judges. If it's a feminine judge, kaze, then it's going to be kaziani for judges there. It can sometimes be used for inanimate nouns as well. So sakhti is difficulty. Usually to make this plural, we would say sakhte. We would just inflect it to say the plural. But you will also see or hear sakhtiani for difficulties. Now I know that was a lot of information, a lot to take in, so I've summed it up here in a little chart. And this shows you how we can make decisions about which endings to stick on which nouns to make them plural. You can pause the video here and just have a look at how this works. The feminine form is similar in a lot of ways. There's just a few changes there, and that's how we make these decisions about how to put which endings on which nouns there. And this actually does follow a pattern. It's not just a whole bunch of craziness. So let's go back to these examples that John McWhorter gave us, and let's see how we can explain it using these rules we just learned.
Well, in Pashto, the plural could make a grown man cry, like eyelashes, banu gan, okay?
Okay, so barnu is a masculine noun ending in u, so we're going to have to add gan on the end to make eyelashes. And if we look at our decision tree, we can see that we just followed it like that. Let's look at another example, he said.
Hands, las, not gun, not las gun, las una.
Okay, here we have a pattern one masculine noun, and it's an inanimate, non-living noun. I mean, I guess you could argue that a hand is living, but a hand by itself is not a whole living thing, so we use it as an inanimate thing in Pashto, and we add the una ending, la suna. And again, that follows our little decision chart, just like that. Okay, he gave us another example here.
Wolves, leo an.
Well, the singular form of the word is actually lewa for a wolf. And remember, when we have a schwa sound on the end, we cover over it with the ending. And here we're going to use the animate an ending for lewan and wolves. And again, that just perfectly follows our little decision tree here. So yes, it is quite complicated, but there are clear rules of how these things work. But unfortunately, that's not all. There are some more exceptions and special behaviors, and you can read more about that in the Lingdok's Pashto Dictionary. You can use it as a reference, and there'll be some helpful practice quizzes up there. And in the next video, we're going to explore more about some of these exceptions or special behaviors and how we inflect these plural forms.